right, good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Laura. I'm the Youth Services Manager at the Cedar Mill Library, and I'm really excited that you're all joining us today. We are very happy to host Megan Barella for this program. She is a nationally recognized happy home and parenting specialist on a mission to heal families one home at a time. She is also a mom, a teacher, a positive discipline educator. As a renowned speaker and facilitator, Megan is the go-to expert for positive parenting and an intervention specialist for strong-willed and highly sensitive children. And we have hosted her before, and we're really happy to host her again. So let me turn it over to you, Megan.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Laura, for the warm welcome. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I will share slides this evening as we go along. The way that it's set up tonight is that we'll have an hour of content, and then at the end we'll have a half hour for Q&A. So this is time for you to get some individualized support and a little bit of coaching as well. And I also recognize that people may have to hop off and do bedtime at the 1 hour mark. So welcome to Growing Together in the Early Years. Can you see the slides? Great.
Yes.
I really want to help you understand and enjoy the world of children from birth to 5 and to go home with some practical tools. So we're going to do a combination of brain science and practical tools. I'd love for you, if you are able to share in the chat, the ages of your children. What do you love most about this age? And what is your biggest challenge with your young children? Great. Welcome, everyone. Early childhood is definitely my favorite age in human development. And one time I used to offer a lot more in-person classes at libraries, and one of the youth librarians said to me, "You know, Megan, humans peak at age 3." And I kind of agree with her. I have been an early childhood educator, and I'm also a master trainer. So I train early childhood educators. And so it's great to be here with you tonight, supporting all of you as parents of the next generation. The reality is this age, it is so physically taxing. And in early childhood, there's never a time where we have more influence and impact over our children's lives as we do now. And I have a 17-year-old, and it's such a different ball game in parenting. Those of you may have older children as well. So we want to maximize this time and support all of you as parents of young children, while also honoring the stress of having young children and also the stress of being a parent in today's world. So here's what we're going to cover tonight. There will be a replay. You're welcome to post your questions in the chat. There may be times where you can unmute and share, and then we will go for 1 hour, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. I have developed the Happy Home Coaching programs, and I like to honor the perspective of privilege that I teach from. I am a single mom to a 17-year-old, and my background is in positive discipline, so I'll be sharing a lot of positive discipline tools tonight. And I also have a master's degree in conflict resolution. Right now, I almost exclusively work with parents who are going through divorce, separation, co-parenting, and parents who have neurodiverse children. So you're welcome to get tapped into my free resources. I have the Parenting for the Next Generation Facebook group and also the Happy Home Week Masterclass. And we'll be sharing some resources as we go along tonight, and my whole complete list of resources, including my free offerings, I just popped into the chat. So please remember tonight that you're the experts on your lives and parenting, and I'm here to be your support person. I really believe in interrupting bias. If anything I say you want to question or challenge, you're welcome to do that. I want to help you let go of parenting guilt and really be judgment-free and focused on compassion. To remember that stress is always the problem, not you and not your children. So please do use the chat as much as you'd like to be interactive. If you do happen to know someone and you're here live, Let's maintain confidentiality, and I want you to enjoy, relax, and have fun. Let's get excited to learn and grow together alongside our young children while also honoring the challenges. Okay, so let's get started with a state of parenting. This is the emotional landscape of parents today. We have extremely high stress levels, and high stress is always going to equal high emotions. As parents today, a lot of us have not, even if we came from loving homes, our parents didn't necessarily know how to support our emotions. As children ourselves, we weren't given the message that all our emotions are okay to feel, from anger to sadness and the whole landscape of emotions. So, what I find is as parents today, we're supporting ourselves in our healthy emotional development while we're doing the same thing for our children. And it does make we're doing 2 and 3 times the work in order to do that. We're going to talk about the mental health challenges of this time. We're in the state of the world stress. And there's also just financial and relationship stress, whether you are together and married, have a partner, are single parent, or co-parenting. It's a very high time of stress, and all of that can equal heightened emotions in families. So it's important to honor the landscape that everyone is parenting in today. In fact, in October 2021, did you know that a national state of emergency in children's mental health was declared? And since that time, there really hasn't been enough funding and resources allocated to support mental health in families. We're still in a state of rebuilding, and it's really challenging to fortify mental health in families when stress is constant and increasing in today's world. What I find is that a lot of parents personalize parenting challenges that really have to do with stress of the world and the state of our country, the state of the world, and the lack of support for families. So I want to make sure that we're not blaming ourselves for societal oppression and injustices. And then the way that that impacts all of our families is unique. Compassion for ourselves as parents is the key to transformation. Okay. So I wanted to start off with understanding where we are in the landscape of parenting today. And then within this landscape, I hope that we can build some tools and support for the amazing work that all of you are doing as parents today. And I always say, alone we struggle, together we can do this, and really building our parenting community. So, all that with the landscape of parenting today, let's dive into the top behavioral challenges. I'd love for you to share, what is your biggest behavioral challenge or struggle with your young children? And Laura, if you don't mind putting that poll up, you're welcome to share in the chat, or we'll get our first poll up around the behavior challenges. Does everyone see the poll? And you're welcome to either click on the challenges in your family, or if something isn't there, then please do share it in the chat. A great resource for understanding our children's. Great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Great. How fun. It's such a creative age, dealing with how many of them there are. Yeah, sharing, hitting, eating, running away. Okay, I hope to give you some tools tonight. All right. Did everyone get to vote? Oh, looks like we got a few more. This is a great resource. It's called Few It's Normal, and it's from Hey Sigmund, which is a wonderful resource and blog. And this has an age by age breakdown of developmentally appropriate behavior. So I think I'm going to end the poll, and then here's the results. All right. And I want to share these challenges too, just so you know that you're not alone in any of the challenges that you're working on with in your family. All right. So emotional dysregulation and power struggles, we'll be covering screen time as well, some routines, sleep and eating. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for sharing. Okay. As we're centering into developmentally appropriate behavior challenges, children are routinely punished for developmentally appropriate behavior. And one of the questions that I get a lot is, Megan, is this normal? And for most of the behavior, this is my perspective. Most of our children's behavior is developmentally appropriate, yet it still can be stressful. A lot of parents will say, I know that this is normal, but what do I actually do to guide this behavior? And we also want to expand the definition of what's normal behavior beyond neurotypical standards to honor neurodiversity and the unique needs and stress in families. Okay. Here are behavior challenges that are developmentally appropriate for this age, yet still stressful. And again, that Hey Sigmund article is a great resource to break it down. Okay. In the first 3 to 5 years of life, individuation is just beginning. Are you familiar, write in the chat, yes or no, are you familiar with the term individuation? Just write a Y if yes, I've heard of it, and if no. Individuation is the process by which children separate from their parents. And individuation is lifelong and definitely in the first 18 to 25 years of a young person's life. And there's two key developmental periods where individuation is especially strong. And individuation, again, is the process by which children separate out from their parents. So eventually they'll leave our home and move out on their own. And so up until 2.5 years of life, our kids actually think they are the same person as us. They have no idea of separateness. And around 2.5 to 3 to 5 years, this process of identity formation really kicks in. And then the other time that it kicks in is in the teenage years. And that's why the term three-nager, have you heard of that term, is actually very sound from a brain science perspective, because individuation is happening at that 3-year-old and at that teenage time. The other thing to remember about brain development at this age is young children are really cause and effect scientists. So a young child's job is to really explore their world, and our job is to create a safe container for their exploration. Okay, so here's some brain basics from Hey Sigmund article of what is not yet developed and what's developing. Yeah, totally agree for a teenager. Okay, yes. So great. I'm happy to share that term of individuation. So here's what's not yet developed and what's developing in kids up to about 2 3/4 age. And then at ages 3 to 5, Kids still have not yet developed impulse control, emotional regulation, the ability to be flexible, patience in waiting, understanding of fairness, conflict resolution skills, sustaining attention, able to take perspectives or empathy, logical reasoning, or consistent self control. And then these are the areas that they're still developing. So when you look at these brain basics for 3 to 5 year olds and for two and three quarters age, do you feel like most of the behavior challenges that you're working with in your family do feel developmentally appropriate? Um, let's go ahead and pull up that second poll and kind of get this will give me a sense of how to best support all of you. Um, what parents often tell me, so Laura, whenever you get a chance for the second poll, so I want you to look at, do you feel like what's the current experience with your children's behavior? Are you wondering if certain behavior is, quote, normal? Do you feel the behavior is normal, but you still don't know what to do about it? Are you someone in your family, you're really trying to expand the definition of what is normal behavior beyond maybe what society or what a neurotypical lens says? Do you feel like your family does need early intervention support but doesn't have it? Or do you already have early intervention support in place? Because even with developmentally appropriate behavior, we can still get into what's called a negative feedback loop when we don't know how to support it. Um, and so, as we're wrapping up the poll, I do want to share, I can send it out in the resources. No one is clicking that early intervention support would be helpful. But for those of you who are watching the replay, for early intervention support, you can reach out to Northwest Regional Education Service District that serves Washington County. There's also an Oregon screening project. If you can Google that, there's an assessment you can do online for your family. And if you do feel like more individualized support would be helpful, many parents that I work with have also done parent-child interaction therapy. And that's where you have a therapist that can actually follow you around. You have a little mic in your ear and give you suggestions. And what I love about PCIT is that it's usually covered by many insurance companies. It really does depend on the individual therapist and finding a good therapist. What I don't love about PCIT is I hear that sometimes they recommend timeouts, which isn't really brain-based. Let's go ahead and end the poll here. Great. And here's the results. Yeah. So a combination of wondering if this behavior is normal, what to do about normal behavior, and also expanding the definition of what is normal. So here is, thank you everyone for sharing that. My perspective on normal behavior and also on neurodiverse children. I work mostly with parents of neurodiverse children, and I really see them as my collaborators in ending fear-based discipline. What for our neurodiverse learners, there's something called universal design, which means the strategies and tools that are best for our neurodiverse learners are actually best for all children. Also, we can find out a lot about how to support your unique family reality and the needs in your family by looking at temperament. And I'll share it's in the resources, the temperament tool that talks about goodness of fit. And we'll dive into that in a little bit. So if you do have neurodiversity in fit neurodiverse family members, I work again mostly with parents of neurodiverse children, so I'll be sharing tools that really work effectively to support all of our learners. Okay. So, what can happen? As many of you said, I understand that this behavior is normal, or I'm not sure, or I'm trying to expand the definition of what is normal behavior. What can happen is this is from conscious discipline. We can easily get into a negative feedback loop and behavior pattern with our children. And that's when we have misbehavior or a behavior challenge. And we maybe don't have enough support, or we are triggered, stressed out, hungry, tired. We don't know what tools to use. So we can respond negatively or enable the behavior. And then the child's behavior can actually intensify. And then the parent's response can intensify. And everything I do is try to support parents to interrupt this cycle, because what can happen is you all have young learners, and if you or young children, if you notice this negative feedback loop is going on, unfortunately, now I work with a lot of parents of teenagers, and this negative cycle has been in place since early childhood, and then it's really solidified. And so we want to, if you identify to the cycle, just know that positive change is always possible, and it is important to get support to interrupt this cycle now. So, in positive discipline, we look at parenting challenges and how we can transform them into teachable moments to take problems, misbehavior, stress, challenges, and translate them into life skills, into positive behavior and character traits, to meet needs, and to really focus on the strength within challenges. So, how do we do that? One of a great strategy to dive into is looking at temperament and goodness of fit in families. And there are 9 temperament traits. And I love, Laura, I don't know if you're just able to share the temperament quiz, the link in the chat. You're welcome to do this while we're here in the training, or it takes about 2 to 3 minutes. You can do it anytime, and it's going to line up temperament for yourself and for a child, one of your children. And it looks at these 9 temperament traits. The goal with supporting temperament in our children is to provide what's called goodness of fit, which is giving our children what their brains need to thrive, not necessarily what our brains needs to thrive. If you do have neurodiverse learners, very often there may be temperament traits that are deemed difficult. And it's really sad with temperament because even as babies, um, very young children and babies are labeled easy or difficult based on their temperament traits. There is no good or bad with temperament. There's strengths with each temperament trait and how it manifests. With our neurodiverse learners, there's often a combination of traits that come together so that there's high intensity, persistence, sensitivity, maybe resistance to change. And unfortunately, again, those kids are labeled difficult. So what I love about this temperament quiz is it will give you a goodness of fit suggestions that line up your temperament with your child's temperament. And I was just doing a training last week for educators, and one of the teachers did this for themselves, and I think they had it about an 11-month-old, and they found it really helpful. So thank you so much. Yes, to the teachable moments. Yay. Okay. So when you go through that temperament quiz, you can write down the areas of temperament similarities and differences for you and your child. And then where you share similarities, you can strengthen those areas of natural connection through quality time interactions. Like if you both have high activity levels, then you know that doing things, physical things together are going to naturally strengthen connection time. And then to really read the goodness of fit recommendations and take one suggestion and see if you can put it into place. So this is a great resource that I think one of you said that you're a teacher, and this is a great resource to share with your parents. Okay. So here is our reality with parenting. It's such a stressful time to be a parent. We've had the state of emergency that was declared, and most of us are parenting in this backdrop of high stress. And the other stressor comes from a lot of us are working to bring in new tools. Most parents today want to parent, at least in some ways, differently than the way that they were raised. And so now we're going to share some practical tools that embody the root of the word discipline, which actually means to teach, not to punish. I always thought discipline meant to punish, but the root of the word means to teach. And so consequences and rewards aren't really working for this generation, especially for our neurodiverse kids. So I help parents shift into the tools of empathy and empowerment as your primary discipline tools. So let's go ahead and to dive into those. As we're working to support behavior, we want to remember that behavior is about communication of needs. And I love this behavior iceberg that is more for adults and the context of our behavior. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and focus on our first practical tool. And in order to do this, we're going to go through a set of commands, okay? And you are simply going to listen to what I say and follow the commands, okay? So you can do this if your body allows, you can do this at home. Okay, so round one, ready? You'll just do what I say. So don't sit down. Don't sit down, right? And don't look at the screen. Don't look at the screen. And don't put your hands by your side. And don't stand still. And don't stand up. Okay? Just notice what you are thinking and feeling with that round one. Now we're going to go into round two. Okay, ready? So same thing. If your body allows, you'll just follow these commands. Stand up and look up and look straight ahead and put your hands up and put your hands down. March in place and then sit down. Okay, so what did you notice the difference between round one and round two? If you want to unmute and share, you can share briefly, or you can share in the chat. What did you notice the difference between round one and round two? Here's what adults often say. With the don't statement, it's not really clear. Round two, definitely easier to process and do. Definitely. Um, People will often say those don't statements. It was really hard to know what to do. Yep. Round one looks like ordering. Yep. Round two is clear and not feeling confused. Yes, yep. So that's usually what most grown-ups say. So we know if that round one of telling children what not to do is confusing for adults, then it's going to be really confusing for our little ones. How many of you heard, like, don't do this, and you thought, I want to do exactly what she says not to do? It was anyone feeling that? If so, that you also may have children who are wired that way, or some of you may have kids who are wired that way. Yep. If you tell me not to do something, I'm gonna do it. remember earlier we talked about our young children are little scientists that are wired to explore the world. So we want to tell them, send that message that the world is open for exploration within safe limits. Also, when you hear like don't sit down, don't stand up, our brains focus on the thing we don't want to be doing, right? So if we're saying don't hit, don't throw that, don't run in the street, then our kids are focusing on what we don't want them to do. So, one of the things we can open up for group coaching in a little bit at 7 is when are you most likely to say don't to your toddler, and what would be the do transition? What can your child do? And you're welcome to share some of that in the chat right now. When are you most likely to say don't? And then what do you want your children? What can they do? Usually parents fall or teachers fall back on don't when there's a safety issue. Like don't run into the road, don't hit, don't bite, or when we're really tired or stressed out. So for don't bite, maybe there's a chew toy that the child can bite. Hitting is interesting because there's going to be, remember, behavior is about communication of needs. And so there could be various reasons why children hit. Some children actually just want the connection. So if we offer a high five or a hug instead, that actually meets the need for connection. Other kids are really in touch with their anger at a young age, and then they need something they can do physically that you're okay with. And so those are just some examples of translating from don't to do. Yeah, giving up two options to pick. Exactly. You can do this or this. You decide. So, whatever your don't to do statement is, it's unique what your do statement is. It depends on your family values, your family rules, what your child is learning at that time, the developmental skills they're working on, their temperament. But whatever the do statement is, we want to keep it simple. 1 to 3 words. Parents often overtalk, and it's okay to be direct and simple, or direct and keep it simple with 1 to 3 words, and then to model the behavior. So if you're saying gentle touch or sit down, then we want to do the behavior ourselves. And then the last thing you can do with your do statement is practice it in calm and connected moments. Yeah, 1 to 3 words and modeling. Yes, yes. Okay. So if you have questions, you want some individualized support with those don't to do statements, we will open up at the end. Okay. Now we're going to talk about connection. Positive human relationship connection. I never knew this. It's a basic human need like food, water, shelter, and sleep. Connection is a building block for human life. And that's why we had a big reason why we had a national state of alert emergency on children's and mental health in the pandemic because those connection needs were not met. And now we're in a state of rebuilding from that time. Okay. So this is especially true for young children that connection is a basic human need. Why? Because human babies have what's called experience dependent brains. It means on all human babies are actually born premature. I used to teach childbirth education, and this is something we shared with families because if human brains, ideally, human babies would be in utero for 3 more months, but then their heads wouldn't fit through the birth canal. So, all human babies are born premature, and human life develops in those first 5 to 7 years, especially through positive relationship connection with us. Dr. Dan Siegel says children's brains are like sponges. So here's our adult brains that are fully formed by age 25, but can change throughout the lifespan. And then here's our children's brains, just sponging off of our brains to grow their own. And that is some of the brain science of parenting, but also the pressure and the responsibility, especially with today's high stress levels. Okay, so part of this brain development in the first 5 years of life is that there's slow emotional regulation development. So young children are prone to more temper tantrums, meltdowns, and emotional dysregulation. And then a children's brain grows to 90% of its adult size by 5 years of life. And children's grow their brains in a large part through the relationship with their caregivers. Okay? So let's go. Let's see, we talked about that. And think about our children's brains have this basic human need for connection, right? Yet, parents today, stress levels are so high. Parents are overworked. Parents may be distracted. Parents have so much pressure on them. Or your children might also be going through a transition, like going to a new school or the birth of a new sibling. And so, what do you think a children's brain might do when their basic human need for connection isn't met? What happens when children are hungry or tired? Okay. When children's basic needs for connection aren't met, we can get those attention seeking misbehavior cycles. And remember, we talked about that negative feedback loop between the developmentally appropriate yet still challenging behavior, the parental response, the child's behavior intensifying, then the parent's behavior intensifies. Well, this can really happen with attention seeking behavior because when children's basic human need for connection isn't met, excuse me there, their brains are going to go into attention seeking mode in order to get their connection needs met and grow their brains. And so, my mentor in positive discipline says attention is a poor substitute for connection. I also love this quote. Every time you think of calling a kid intention seeking, consider changing it to connection seeking and see how your perspective changes. And just think whether you're watching the recording or if you're here live, I'd love for you to just share a yes in the comments or a why. If you feel like some of the behavior challenges might actually be attention seeking from your children, whether it's a stressor in life that you're dealing with that is preventing connection with the child, whether it's just your child is at childcare or at school all day and then they want to connect with you at the end of the day or transitions to a new sibling. Yes, yes. Okay, great. So these tools are really going to be for you two and anyone else who just shared. So we know this connection is positive relationship is this basic human need that connection needs were unmet from the pandemic and connection is going to equal cooperation. So if you feel like your kids might be in attention seeking cycles and you really want to explore connection equaling more cooperation, these tools are for you. Okay. So the first one is quality time. And I always feel slightly guilty telling parents about quality time because as a parent of young children, you are with your children so much and you're doing so much for them already. Quality time from positive discipline is a little bit different. It's really having this intention to enjoy the amazing young people that you're raising, to appreciate their interests, to smile at them, to love their smiles, to just look at them, appreciate them, and follow them in their world into play. And the best connection activities are going to be child led, screen free, low cost. And so here's the quality time recommendations from Positive Discipline. For young children, it's 10 to 30 minutes a day or whenever possible. If you're like, I can't get this in every day, I have a shortcut for you. Child-led play. If your body allows, you're just getting on the floor and you're following your children in their world. Try and do non-competitive activities with a low frustration level. Focus on connection only, not disciplining or teaching. And sometimes kids can test you during this time. And if you can have a playful approach, if that happens. Okay, so these are just some general reminders about quality time with children. So, parents, this is no guarantee, but if the behavior challenges is attention seeking, sometimes parents find that simply implementing regular quality time has transformed behavior challenges because you're meeting your child's need for connection to grow their brains. And so they don't have to go into that attention seeking overdrive. So, what are some favorite ways to connect with your children? Yes. And what are the obstacles to quality time? For parents of young children, if you are working parents full time, it is conflicting basic needs to connect and to meet hunger needs to get children fed right after work. And so that's something that you might want to, I often support parents on how can we meet both those needs right at that very challenging time of day. Okay, say you don't have this, it's just not realistic to follow your children and play for 10 minutes or more of a day. Shortcut to quality time. Just look at your children, enjoy them, love who they are. Appreciate the amazing people you're raising. See the good in them. See how cool they are. Laugh at their jokes. Just be present for a moment. Listen. Ask questions about their interests or stories. Give a little hug. This can happen in 30 seconds. You just kind of drop down into your child's world. And if you're a visual person, I often recommend parents because there's so many obstacles to connecting and getting quality time with our kids. Um, and so it can take a little bit of a conscious effort, but remember, connection is going to equal cooperation. So with our kids, we're either putting the time in a reactive way, having to put out fires, so to speak, or deal with negative behavior, or we're putting the time in proactively. So if you can just take this shortcut to quality time and just really just enjoy your kids, just look at them and be present with them, even for 30 seconds. And one way to do this is when you go to connect with your kids, just visualize you're drawing a doorway or a window for 30 seconds, for 10 minutes. You're going to set aside your adult responsibilities. They will be there when you get back and just enter into your child's world for that set amount of time. Okay, the other tool of connection is called connection in communication to facilitate cooperation. Do you find that sometimes you shout orders across the room? Do you feel like your kids don't listen until you raise your voice? Do you feel like your children are, you could consider them defiant, disobedient, or non-compliant? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this tool is for you. It is very common, especially trying to get kids out the door for school or an activity, getting ready, that we do yell orders across the room. This is another time saver, a preventative, proactive tool. If you can get on your child's level, eye level, and make eye contact if possible. Include positive physical touch. Hand on the shoulder, hug, hold your child's hand, have them sit on your lap. Be really present with your child. Make sure your phone is away, and then focus on that do statement, on what you'd like to see happening, and just tune into where your child is emotionally. And then you're gonna say your do statement and then wrap it up with laughing, making a little joke, adding something playful in. This one tool, one time I was offering a training for parents of older children, and a parent went and did this right away. And she was like, wow, this tool is really magic, when she had been having a lot of disconnect and lack of cooperation from her child. So, this is another simple tool of connection to facilitate more cooperation. Okay. And then our last tool of connection is focusing on play. And I'd love to do just a check-in. You're welcome to share in the chat which of the tools so far are really speaking to you. We've got the do statements, the quality time, that connection in communication. And also, you can post in the chat if you know you would like some coaching support when we open up to the Q&A. You can also share that in the chat. Okay, our next tool is the tools of play. Play is the way in early childhood, because for children up to 6 years of age, and especially for birth to 3, even 4 and 5 years, play, learning, work, love are all one concept. Play has all of these definitions for young children. Play is our number one discipline tool, and that's not talked about enough. Play is our number one, remember, discipline as teaching, not punishing. So play is our number one teaching or discipline tool. Why is that? Well, if our responsibility is to teach our children or to discipline, we know play in early childhood, it's the number one way children learn. Then play really becomes the number one way for parents or teachers to teach. And so play becomes our number one discipline tool, because discipline means to teach and play is how children learn. Do any of you feel like you're naturally a playful parent? Just drop a Y in the comments if you feel like I'm naturally a playful parent. And rest assured, most parents will say no. They do not naturally feel like a playful parent. Okay, what is so motivating about using these tools is how effective they are and how cooperation will come more effortlessly with your children. Using the tools of play is the number one way to connect with our kids in a developmentally appropriate way. And it also, I love sharing the tools of play because play also soothes parent stress levels. If we can get over that hump and that resistance to using play, play actually soothes adult stress levels. And using the tools of play, you're going to just feel like the amazing parent you already are. So, simple first tool of play, just turning everything into a song. How many of you already do this? Having a song for bath time, for cleanup. You could have it for sibling expectations, like using gentle hands, singing. If you have a runner, you're gonna sing a "We Stay Together, We Hold Hands" before you get out of the car or get off the bus. A getting ready song, a transitions reminder, a rule reminder. And Daniel Tiger, with all the jingles and Daniel Tiger, is if you need some ideas, you can listen to them there. Listen to Dan or watch Daniel Tiger for some great ideas. So, is anyone already using this tool of turning it into a song? I'd love to hear what time of day, if you want to share in the chat, that you use it for. When I'm working with parents of young children, this is probably, I feel like I'm saying a lot of things are number one tools, but this is the number one tool of play. What right now is your child's favorite animal? Okay. Whatever their favorite animal is, you just become that animal throughout the transition or to give a reminder. Now, here's the key. You don't ask your kids, oh, do you want to be a kitty to go to the bathroom? You become the kitty and head off to the bathroom. You become the doggy to get shoes on. And this is where most parents have resistance to doing that, and I want to normalize that. Some parents even feel like they're silly or, that they feel silly doing that. But becoming animals, when you utilize this to support with your transitions or your rule reminders, this is when cooperation can really happen most effortlessly. You can also have the favorite stuffy give the reminder or wake the child up in the morning. You can role play with stuffies. One parent of twins said after we did this class, they went back and said that this parent was potty training twins. And so they said, do you want to pee like a monkey or a tiger? You decide. I have no idea what that actually looked like, but it transformed weeks of power struggles around toileting. And again, becoming the animal yourself. So, this might be a tool that you already are using or you want to try out at home. Okay. Acting it out, role playing with toys, acting out if there's certain life skills your kids are working on. You can practice, like, let's play bedtime routine, even when it's not bedtime, to create that positive pattern. Or again, that the stuffy does the teaching. And then just using humor, making yourself laugh, being goofy, making a joke, making a funny face or noise. Just beware of sarcasm and being mean, using a funny tone of voice, or maybe the element of surprise. This is another simple way, just being goofy and playful as a parent. How could you bring more goofiness into your parenting to get more cooperation? So we've got the make it a song, animals, acting it out, or just using humor, being goofy and funny and playful. What tools of play are you currently using, or would you like to try out? And if this is something that you can bring when we open up to the Q&A, you can bring your top challenge and we'll apply the tools. Okay? Now, some of you mentioned routines as something that you're working with. So, what current routines do you currently have for bedtime, cleanup, mealtime, morning time? And then, how could you bring in the tools of play to help support the routine? And specifically, if there's a challenging time of day, how can we really infuse that routine that is currently challenging with play to get more connection and cooperation? Okay. We are going to wrap up today talking about young children and screens before we open up to our Q&A. We've been focusing a lot around the tools of connection for young children. And so, with screen time, I want to help us all reframe screen time that it's not about screens, it's really about connection and stress. In that, are screens interrupting children's basic need for connection and honoring that a lot of parents today are having more screen time because of high parental stress levels. And again, that is not a personal flaw on your part. If you feel like stress is impacting, is it the root for an increase in screen time in your family? Now, there is no hard and fast rules about screen time. And what I want to make sure is that I'm not contributing to any worry, guilt, or shame for parents because what the research is saying is that screens are a source of worry, guilt, and shame for parents. And if we're addressing screen time from a place of worry, of fear, of guilt, of shame, it's going to actually equal more disconnect with our children. Okay. So I also don't want you to feel any shame if you are experiencing shame around screen time. I really just want to normalize that screens are a challenge for 90 to 99% of the families that I work with. Okay. So I'm going to share some screen time guidelines and what the research is saying. And if they're realistic for your family, then onward and forward. It's okay to do less screen time. Screen time is not a basic human need for children. Sometimes I do want to make a shirt that says that. You don't have to feel guilty if your kids aren't getting screen time. Okay? It's not a basic human need for kids. And if you find the guidelines aren't realistic, you're not alone. In other words, if your kids are getting more screen time than what the guidelines say, that's the vast majority of parents today. We really want to focus on supporting you with compassion for your parenting reality and really focusing on connection in your family. Okay. Within that, it is okay for no screen time at this age. Your children will not be behind if they are not doing screens in early childhood. Um, and the other reality for parents is that screens are filling in the childcare gap. One, parents need a break, or more parents since the pandemic are trying to work at home and not being able to afford or wanting to, able to invest in the high cost of childcare. So screen times are filling in that gap. And again, I don't want you to feel guilty about that. A lot of times the screen time recommendations, this is the part that's really unrealistic. They will say in early childhood, if your children are on screens, you should be watching the screens with them. That defeats the whole purpose. Kids are on screens because parents need a break or because parents are working. So that's when some of this advice or best practices totally unrealistic. Also, if you are so stressed out that you feel like you're going to yell at your kids, you're going to respond in anger and if they have a screen time break and you have a break, I don't want you, please take care of yourselves. Okay. There's so many different realities for why kids are on screens today. I want to honor whatever your reality is, honor the stress levels and help you come up with some realistic guidelines to support your family. Okay. So here's what the general recommendations are. Birth to 18 months, limit screen time use to video chatting. Like if you have a family that lives out of state or in a different country. 18 to 24 months educational programming with a caregiver, right? These are the unrealistic recommendations for 20 to 30 minutes a day. And then 2 to 5 ages, no more than 1 hour on weekdays and 1.5 hours on weekends. Now, I just want to say again, it's okay to be screen free. Screens are not a basic human need. And that being said, you might be using screens for a break for childcare in your family because of high stress levels. Okay. So, in early childhood, here's what we know language is important for children because it helps them get their needs met. They can express their needs verbally instead of relying on other ways to get attention, right? We usually see, not always, but often when children's language skills increase, then their emotional dysregulation decreases because they can speak to get their needs met. Okay. But as screen time reduces the amount of quality time interactions between children and their caregivers, then it means kids aren't developing those language skills. Okay. So screen time can potentially impact language development. And then uh, correlation may have an increase in emotional dysregulation. Okay. This article says almost 200 conversations get lost in a day when parents and kids aren't communicating because of screens. So that can be significant. So this just says um, that statistic about language acquisition, right? And so the other reality that, and if this is something that you're finding in your family, you're welcome to get support in the Q&A, but also you can reach out to me individually. That screens are being used as digital pacifiers. I'm not sure if you've heard that term before. So it's managing children's emotions with tech. And this, unfortunately, it's only going to make them more likely to react intensely to feelings like anger, frustration, and sadness. And then children aren't learning other coping skills. So that short-term peace or that short-term need to just survive the moment may come at the price of long-term what they call our moodiness, emotional dysregulation, and heightened impulsivity. If you feel like you are having to depend on digital pacifiers or that pattern started during a high stress time and now you don't know how to change it, please do reach out to me individually for support, okay? Um, Overall, there's associations. High media usage in children is usually related to poorer cognition, language, and socio-emotional skills. There is that whole, people often say like Steve Jobs wouldn't let his kids have any phones and they went to, screen-free schools. We know that this generation of kids, they're becoming our guinea pigs because human development happens through connection, not through screens. So, more frequent parent-child interactions are going to be associated with better body motor, cognition, language, and social emotional skills in children, okay? I do not want you to feel guilty if you feel like your kids have a negative relationship with screens. It's just something to know that positive change is always possible. And there's never going to be an easier time to change the cycle. It's just going to get a little bit harder as your kids get older. So, from UNICEF, children need humans, not screens. Our babies and toddlers learn the most from human interaction. Screens hijack attention spans, curtail ability to control impulses, and can potentially reduce empathy. Okay, here's my screen time recommendations. What the experts say is screen time should be no more than 1 hour a weekday and 1.5 hours on weekends. That's what the APA, a lot of the recommendations are. Here's what I say. Remember, screen time is not a basic human need. It's okay if you don't do any screen time in your family. This is where I say this in a really loving way. Um, and I would say no phones or iPad for young children. Not needed. Watching TV on the big screen for screen time. Slow programming. Daniel Tiger, Little Bear, Bluey, 1960s Sesame Street. The slower the programming, the better in early childhood. The library put together some great resources. I have a Screen Time 101. Laura, I don't know if you're able to share that. 2024, I did a talk for the library on screen time, and I believe we included some resources that the librarians put together. Slow programming, because that quick programming can be a stressor on kids' brains. No YouTube kids, even YouTube kids, uh, don't just no YouTube because unfortunately, sorry, it's just started pouring outside. Unfortunately, I've worked with parents and their 7 to 8 year olds have started, they were watching pornography for months and the parents didn't even know it. Pornography is a $1 billion industry and they're trying to target lifelong users. No YouTube, no YouTube kids. Put it on the big screen in a common area where you can see what your children are watching and focus on that slow educational programming. And if you're not following those recommendations, please do what's best for your family. And I don't want you to have any shame or guilt about it. Those are just my recommendations, okay? Thank you so much for being here tonight. We've really been focusing on connection as the building block for human life and being able to have that quality time with our children to meet those connection needs, to have connection and communication, to facilitate cooperation, to translate our don'ts to do, and some tools of play that you can put to use right away. Please do, whether you're watching the recording or you're here live, you're always welcome to reach out to me individually for support. meganbarella.com. I do have a free masterclass. If you go on my website, I think it says masterclass, it's the Happy Home Week. You can sign up for that, and it includes a free 30-minute session with me. And also, Parenting for the Next Generation is my Facebook group. So I'll share all the resources that we went over tonight in the chat. One of the things I think we didn't talk about is the flipped lid. Oh, thank you, Laura, for sharing that. Okay, so if you're catching the replay, or the recording, thank you so much for being here. And